This happened back when I was in college. It was back before there was cell phones or the internet. My college was located up in the mountains with only a small town situated beside the main campus. While it was a very good technical school, the curriculum was very demanding, so there was a high dropout rate. Therefore, the partying could be quite intense to release some of the pressure. There was one fraternity I knew a lot of the brothers since we had attended the same high school. To be honest, I didn't like any of them. It always felt to me like fraternities were a place to buy your friends and be popular. This particular frat liked to throw a big party in their basement every Saturday night during the winter season. Some of my real friends enjoyed these parties, so I'd take them, kind of acting like an escort. It is important to note this frat had a reputation for acting like militant fascists at times. So you had to be careful how you handled them when things got tense. Of course, I knew many of them, so it was a bit easier for me at the time. I remember one particular Saturday evening, a nice-looking girl came up and asked me for a light. She wanted to smoke a cigarette. I obliged her, and she stood there by the bar, smoking openly in front of everyone. Sometime a little later, after she had finished her smoke, some dude came up to the bar and lit up a smoke. Immediately, a bunch of frat brothers surrounded him, asking if he had asked permission. He put out his cigarette and apologized, but I could see the frat brothers still weren't happy, and started to shove him. "Hey!" I shouted out. "That girl just had a smoke and nobody said a thing!" One of the frat brothers, who was an upper-class man, turned around to see who was challenging them. He stood there for a moment and gave me a cryptic look. He then turned back and told the dude to go outside if he wanted to smoke. This evening there was a large tub full of grain alcohol with purple Kool-Aid mixed in to cut it. A huge chunk of frozen ice floated in the middle. People at the party were getting totally smashed drinking that awful mess. Another frat brother I knew from high school came up with a paper cup full of the punch. I took a sip and grimaced. It felt like there was some soft hair in my mouth. I spit it out and stuck a finger in my mouth, fishing a small tuft of soft fur. I could feel my anger begin to rise as I pushed through the crowd to get at the tub. The chunk of ice had melted quite a bit now, and then I saw it. There, in what was left of the ice, was a frozen kitten. "What the hell?" I shouted as my anger continued to grow. A pledge was standing beside me and said, "Cool, huh?" as he laughed. I could not help myself as I made a hard fist and punched him in the face as hard as I could. At that point, I blacked out from the rage. When I came to again, I was standing out in the yard. There were cops everywhere. It's no secret the local police there don't like any of the fraternities. I watched in silence as cops were placing some of the handcuffed frat boys in the back of their squad cars. There was an older police officer standing beside me, and he told me to leave, which I immediately did. Later in the month, the fraternity lost their charter. Sometimes I'd see some of the ex-frat members at other parties. They liked to give me mean looks, and one named Roger once started to trash talk, but as soon as I approached them, they left. Charlotte? It all started last summer. Everything was the same as it had always been in our quiet old town. Just like every other summer I could remember. The sun, bright and scorching to the skin. The sky, painted with the most beautiful clouds you could imagine. And the people, of course, ready to get out of this place, on retreat to their summer homes and cottages. There was only one thing that was misplaced. Charlotte, my absolute favorite person in the world, my best friend since practically birth, gone. Her parents too. It's like they just vanished. I didn't get a word, not a text, a call, or even a trace. Yeah, that's the weirdest part. I seem to be the only one that even remembers her. It had been an entire month after Charlotte and her family went missing, and I had already asked almost the entire town of Luna Lena if they had seen her, or found any clue of where Charlotte might be, anything. Each and every person just glared at me like I had lost my mind. Like the last 17 years of my life with her was some lie my brain made up. I wouldn't have it, though. I sure as hell wasn't going to believe them. I knew in my soul that she was real. After about 2 months of this, I was starting to feel hopeless. And yeah, a little crazy. I decided to give up on my desperate search for Charlotte Cuervo, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of peace. I stepped out into the brisk September night and gazed longingly at the star-polluted sky. As the luminous glow of the moon hit my skin, a strong feeling washed over my body. Maybe intuition that something big was going to happen. But what? Just then, a shrill, unnerving sound shot through the woods, sending goosebumps down every inch of my skin. Even though every thought in my brain told me it was a horrible idea, I couldn't help but run as fast I could toward the noise. Adrenaline pumped through my veins, and I could hardly feel my legs. I didn't even know where I was going, but at the same time I knew exactly which way to go, every single twist and turn. It was like I wasn't even controlling my own limbs anymore. Then suddenly I halted to a sharp stop. My eyes met the most extraordinary sight they had ever perceived. My mouth struggled to move, but I managed to mutter out one word. Char? She didn't respond. She just glared at me with these hollow, lifeless eyes. I realized instantly something was horribly wrong with her. It looked like her skin was made entirely of TV static, like every cell in her body was separating and reattaching themselves constantly and chaotically, yet ever so slightly. Her features were wrong. It was like I was looking at a distorted, sinister copy of the real Charlotte. I felt a strong feeling of dread. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I screamed, "Tell me what the hell is happening!" "Please." I got no answer. I felt weak and tired. The past couple months of pain and confusion I had experienced leading up to this moment suddenly washed over me. Losing the only person who I could truly connect with, and being made to believe she had never even existed. Suddenly, every painful emotion that I had been keeping inside rushed over me with violent intensity. I dropped to the cool forest floor and sobbed. At that moment, I didn't care about the insanity of the situation I was in or the terror I was feeling. I just cried and cried until I lost my sense of time. After a while, I looked up at the impossible glowing figure with anger and resentment. She was just staring at me with her hollow glowing eyes, waiting. Her static skin now had noise to match. It was all I could hear, and it was getting louder. We stared at each other for a while. Then I realized something. I couldn't look away. I felt mesmerized. Her eyes were hypnotizing. She reached out her hand to me, and as soon as her static fingers touched my skin, I heard 1,000 different voices, but not through my ears. I heard them in my head. They were yelling and whispering and screaming at me. They were all saying the same thing. I tried to understand them through the chaos. Then I slipped away. When I awoke, I was falling slowly into an endless sea of nothing. I felt like I was floating, but I wasn't scared. I felt peaceful, free. Like all the emotional baggage that had been weighing me down my whole life was gone. Forever. Maybe it had never existed. I closed my eyes in acceptance. Then I remembered something. That horrible static copy of Charlotte put some kind of message in my head before I passed out. But what was it? Suddenly everything stopped. The peaceful feeling faded and those voices came back. But it wasn't 1,000 different voices this time, ... It was Charlotte's voice. She screamed out at me from the void. The message was clear this time. "Your memories are not your own. Remember the truth. Remember!" The voice came from every angle, spiraling around my body. The noise shot at me, into my soul. Each bullet of words drove deeper the understanding that everything I had ever known and experienced was a lie. I tried to speak. "No, that can't be true. You're wrong." It came out as a broken whisper. Faster than I could comprehend, it all stopped. The chaos was gone, but Charlotte remained. She looked me in the eyes once again, but this time something was different. Her eyes, they became brighter and brighter the longer I stared into them. As I stared, she said 3 final words to me, with each word sounding increasingly farther away. "Remember the truth." Eventually, the brightness filled my entire vision, and all I could see was a wide array of light. A few minutes went by before my vision started to slowly come back. But I wasn't in the forest anymore. I began to see traces of a small white room. My ears started to pick up the shrill sound of a rhythmic beeping noise, and a very familiar smell of cleaners mixed with traces of bitterness filled my nostrils. Suddenly, I heard panicked footsteps rapidly approach me. It was a woman. She broke out in tears and uttered a sentence that broke me into a painful understanding. "Oh, my Charlotte, you're awake.